This is Matt Hurt at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter.
This is Tiny at Obsessive Tiny on Twitter.
And this is ObsessiveViewer.com's The Obsessive Viewer Podcast. And we're back a little bit. By the way, this is The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show each episode. You can find back episodes at ovpodcast.com, find the blog at obsessiveviewer.com, and subscribe to the subreddit at r/obsessiveviewer. And this week's episode, Tiny, is one that we're recording immediately after last week's.
Yes.
So, you know, it's a marathon recording session, but we're reviewing Creed today, aren't we?
Yeah, the documentary about the 90s faux Christian rock band.
I can't wait for this joke to be over. Did you see the Funny or Die video with Scott Stapp that it was like
I did not.
Oh my god, it's hilarious. It's he reviews Creed as if it's a Creed documentary.
Oh my god.
And he's like they cast Michael B. Jordan, which I mean, I don't get it cuz he looks nothing like me, but it's
that's funny.
And he doesn't like stand on the edge of a cliff screaming a solo into the wind, and it's hilarious.
That's awesome.
It's really funny. From everything that I've heard, he's kind of a douchebag, but that video is hilarious though.
Nice.
And then spoiler for that video, for that Funny or Die video, but he's like, it's I can't remember the title of his fake movie review show, but it's but he's like, join me next week when I reviewed Assassin's Creed.
That's great.
But anyway, it's really funny. I'll put the link in the show notes and everything.
Nice.
But no, Tiny, this is Creed, the 2015 not reboot or requel, but the seventh installment of the Rocky franchise. It's the former world heavyweight champion Rocky Balboa serves as a trainer and mentor to Adonis Johnson, the son of his late friend and former rival Apollo Creed. Mm-hmm. And before we get into our review, Tiny, what's your kind of overall thoughts on the Rocky franchise as a whole?
It was kind of a staple of my childhood.
Nice.
Especially Rocky IV. Because I don't know, it was just so over the top. Like Sylvester Stallone is unbelievably ripped in that movie, and there's the whole Dolph Lundgren is the big old Russian, the classic, at least from our perspective, the classic movie villain is the Russian,
Right.
It has the whole Cold War aspect to it. It's just so much fun. I loved that movie as a kid. And the first one is absolutely a classic. Yeah. The sequel, Rocky II, is a great follow-up. But some of the other ones are just kind of, really, I think the first four are good movies, and I like them. Rocky V is bad. It's just a bad movie. It's stupid. It was a dumb idea. Rocky Balboa has its charms, and it was kind of a fun reboot to the system, to the franchise. We hadn't seen a Rocky movie in 15 years or something, maybe more than that. So it was kind of it was sort of fun. And then it was great to get Creed from a whole different perspective. I'm excited about the new entry in the franchise.
Nice.
So I love the franchise. It's a sports movie, but it's a sports franchise, but it's also a life franchise.
Yeah, totally. My thoughts on the Rocky franchise is I haven't seen any of them in a long time. In fact, in the lead up to Creed, my brain, the way I work is I want to watch everything chronologically in the lead up to something. So if I'm to watch for instance, I would like to go see Mockingjay Part 2, but I haven't seen any of the other Hunger Games movies. So I need to start from the beginning and watch again. And then, that's a poor example. But anyway, in the lead up to Creed, because we had passes, to see it, and I didn't have nearly enough time to watch all of them in a row before heading to the theater. So I just listened to Now Playing Podcast's franchise retrospective of Rocky, all day at work. On my own time, not when I was on the clock. But anyway, and I haven't seen Rocky V or Rocky Balboa, or should I say Rocky V or Rocky 7, Adrian's Revenge. Simpsons reference, guys. Anyway, nice. I haven't seen Rocky V or Rocky Balboa. But I do have fond memories of Rocky and the first one, and I'm sure it holds up really well. I haven't seen it in many years, but I mean, like you said, it's a classic.
Yeah, it is.
In fact, it's Mike, our co-host, who's on sabbatical from the podcast. It's his number 5 top movie of all time. Rocky is
Nice.
which you can hear him talk about in OV146. Anyway, and I liked Rocky 4, which it's funny because I think if I were to revisit it, I would kind of see how ridiculous and kind of I don't think it would hold up that well for me. But I think that knowing you for so long and knowing your enthusiasm for it makes me enjoy it more than I would have without that. So
it's delightfully over the top.
Yeah. So in Rocky 3 was probably the most forgettable. Because I don't remember anything about it except for Clubber Lang.
Yeah.
But yeah. I kind of like the way that the franchise is. I guess like there's 5 Rocky movies, and then Rocky Balboa, I assume, kind of stands alone, and then you could say that it kind of bridges the gap to Creed, which I would think that maybe they might make it into its own franchise, Creed. But anyway, that's all conjecture. That's based on nothing. But
yeah.
Anyway, so Creed is directed by Ryan Coogler, who also directed Michael B. Jordan in Fruitvale Station a couple years ago.
Nice.
Yeah, it's Michael B. Jordan as Adonis Johnson, and Sylvester Stallone as Rocky, and Tessa Thompson as the love interest Bianca. So Tiny, broad strokes, what'd you think of it? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Broad strokes, what'd you think of it?
I really, really loved it.
Nice.
Loved it a lot. I thought it was a great, it built on the themes of the franchise up to this point. And, it wasn't a over celebration of the character of Rocky Balboa. It was, we introduced this new character and he's the main character, and it's mostly about developing him and sort of tying up loose ends of Rocky Balboa's past life, or his past. It removed a lot of the glamour and polish from some of the other movies. It was a more gritty exploration of this story and this franchise. I just loved it. I thought it was awesome characters. Some of the camera work, which we'll get into, and some of the filmmaking was top notch. So it just had so many things working for it. And it hit all the right notes, and I just loved almost everything about it.
Nice. Yeah, I'll echo those sentiments, and I will share this I'll share this Facebook post that I posted the night of. Actually, as we were leaving the theater, I told you how excited I was to post a Facebook post about it.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, so prepare to laugh. So the Facebook post the status is, quote, "I don't know, guys. Unless something comes out in the last 41 days of 2015, I think Creed will be this year's best 7th installment of a franchise that began in the 1970s and features icons of the saga reprising roles to help pass the torch to a new generation of characters. But what do I know, guys?"
Oh my God. What?
Wow, Tiny never laughs this much at my jokes. Wow, you must really like that. I'll have to.
Why is it funny?
Oh, cause I'll tell you later. No, but I really, really enjoyed Creed. Like you said, I thought that it was a worthy successor to my memory of the franchise, really, because a lot of the like listening to now playing podcasts retrospective of it, I remember there's some down moments that are not that high quality.
Yeah.
After the first one even, but to see the torch being carried and the franchise somewhat reinvigorated with a new perspective, and like this is actually the first Rocky movie that it wasn't written by Sly Stallone. And I think that shows there was so much heart in this movie.
Yeah.
And there was so much. The thing that I came away from so much was the humor in it. Like there's some delightful comic relief, and the interplay between Creed and Rocky is just amazing. And like you said, the camera work, I I almost nudged you at one specific point to say, like, did you just see that? Because holy crap, it was incredible.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about when we get more into the discussion. But overall, I really liked it. There were some things that I wouldn't call them issues, but the more I ruminated on them, I kind of found some faults in it. But other than, I mean, those I'll get into here in a bit, but overall, I really, really enjoyed this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so happy to see Michael B. Jordan, I'm trying to think of a boxing, pun, but, to see him to see him bounce back from
Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Fant Four Stick. Yeah, because that was just an abomination. That was just a total knockout, in the bad way.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're
anyway,
really stumbling through this.
This is the second episode we're recording tonight, Tiny. Anyway, yeah. So let's get more into the actual story and the actual movie.
Mm-hmm.
That single continuous boxing match take.
That was so amazing.
Right.
That was so. I was blown away by that. I was like, "Are they seriously doing this right now?" I was seriously thinking that in the theater.
Yeah, and it was like an entire match. It was like
all in real time.
Yeah,
yeah.
It was just insane. Like that's something I've never seen before. Like that level of artistry in depicting a sport.
Yeah,
and just in the brutality of it, the violence of it, like it was so well done. The pace was incredible.
That's one of the more difficult things to demonstrate about sport is how fast they can be. Mm-hmm. Like when you're in the middle of a football play, everything just goes so quickly. Yeah. Or when you're in the middle of a wrestling match or a boxing match, it's just at the drop of a hat, something happens and it's just so fast. Mm-hmm. It's so hard to digest it when you're actually in it, as opposed to just watching it on TV from a distance or from the stands.
Yeah.
It's so much different to be in the middle of it. And I think this is one of the best depictions I've ever seen of capturing the intensity and speed of being in a world-class athlete in a really professional sport. Mm-hmm. I was blown away by that scene. Yeah,
and I mean, Tiny, I know you played football and did a lot of sports in high school and everything, but I don't know if you remember, but I was the manager of the football team freshman year, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Give yourself more credit. You played in the RCA Dome.
I did, sophomore year. Yeah, and I had our friend Kyle point to who I needed to block.
You played on that field.
I did.
You shared a field with Peyton Manning.
Yeah, maybe he can give me money. So anyway, that sequence was just insane. And what I loved about it, is, I mean, it ran the risk of, blowing the wad early. Cause it's like the first, one of two major boxing matches in the movie. And, when it got to the final match at the end of the movie, I was like, are they going to try to do that again? Which spoiler alert, they didn't, but,
right.
And I like that. I like that wasn't like a gimmick. It wasn't like something like flashy. It was show offy when it happened, but it wasn't something that it showed that Coogler could do more with the genre and not be this big thing. He didn't try to top himself really.
Right. Yeah, it demonstrated that Ryan Coogler had a vision for this. Mm-hmm. He had a vision for a Rocky movie. Like he was so, it's just, I wouldn't expect that kind of dedication for the 7th installment of a franchise.
Right.
But apparently Ryan Coogler is just a really good director and knows how to work his camera. And I was just really stunned and beyond pleased to see that kind of dedication and that kind of vision in a Rocky franchise movie.
I was knocked out by it.
Were you?
Yeah.
I was stunned.
Yeah, and
I was out for the count.
Oh god damn it. Anyway, so what'd you think of Michael B. Jordan? I really liked his performance a lot, and I'm a bit of a fanboy for him. Mm-hmm. What'd you think of how did he do?
Perfect casting.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot think of anyone better to play this role. I'm not saying his performance was perfect. I can't really think of how it could have been better.
Right.
But I absolutely loved him. Totally a fan, just turning into a fanboy of Michael B. Jordan.
Yeah.
Was a big fan of him back when he was on The Wire.
Oh yeah.
And so we've both of us have kind of followed his career as a result of that, and I'm glad to see that. He's not just he's carving out a space as a leading man.
Yeah.
Between Fruitvale Station and this, I mean, he can not only can he carry a movie, he can elevate it to a really high level.
And he has such emotional range.
Yeah.
Like between this, Fruitvale Station, even in The Wire, like he's just incredible. Like
yeah, he is.
It's amazing.
He can be such like I guess the word tender comes to mind. He's he can be like such a gentle person, but then you see him in this boxing ring and he's just a force of human ability. I mean, he's beyond athletic in it and just a very what's the word I'm trying to think of? A very
he's
imposing person.
Yeah, there you go.
But he can be so gentle and calm when he's with his love interest in the movie. He like you said, he has such a range to him, both emotional and physical. I'm so impressed with him. Cannot wait to see. I'll see him in anything now.
Yeah,
he's just great.
You might say he's just on fire because he was the Human Torch.
He was the Human Torch.
See Fantastic
Oh, I'm going to
Four.
see it.
Yeah, because it's just trash. Anyway, so he was incredible, and I can't wait to. Do you think that he could get some award recognition for this? Because he was snubbed for Fruitvale Station.
He was.
I honestly think he deserved a nomination for that.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. You never know with the Academy. They're so hit or miss, and they're so erratic in their decision making. It's definitely possible.
Yeah, and as of this recording, the movie hasn't even come out yet. We saw an advanced screening, and we're recording it the night before it is released. So, I mean, I'm curious how it's going to fare at the box office too.
I hope it does well.
Me too. I really do. And not that would dictate whether or not it would be up for award consideration, although probably, unfortunately. But and Sylvester Stallone, I mentioned that I don't have the context of the franchise to go off of, but he seemed so much like fully formed, I guess. My memory of him in the Rocky franchises, he's kind of this kind of like I don't know how to characterize it, like kind of slow-witted person.
Yeah.
I guess
he's a jock.
Yeah, it's like he speaks kind of so like there's parts of the franchise where he's he's illiterate. He's kind of he's forced to be an enforcer for isn't it like he's an enforcer for
for like organized crime
and stuff because he can't do anything else.
Right.
And that can dovetail into some of my thoughts on my criticisms of the movie too. Light criticisms, but before that, I thought that Sylvester Stallone was incredible. He was endearing and hilarious. Like I said in my broad review there, the interplay between the two characters is just in the way the generation gap between them is depicted is just so well done. And if you were to stand outside, like if I were to stand outside of my life and like imagine, like go back in time. And imagine that I went up to someone and said, "Hey, the 7th Rocky movie where Rocky gives, this isn't a spoiler, but Rocky gives Apollo Creed's son instructions on workouts, and then Creed's son takes a picture of it and then says, 'Hey, it's in the cloud. I got it.'" Like just like if I were to say that in the past, like that would sound so ridiculous.
Right.
That would be so ridiculous. But it's one of the best moments of the movie for me in terms of comedy because it's just so funny. And like I said, Stallone is just incredible. Like there's that moment where I won't say where he is, but he's in a emotionally, he's in an emotional place where he's just sitting and reading a newspaper. And I was like, that right there is like the most poignant moment of the movie for me, for that character at least.
Yeah. I really loved seeing his character throughout this franchise. He just comes full circle because the last movie, Rocky Balboa, was about a man who he's lived his entire life as a as a physical person. That's what he's good at, is inflicting damage on things and people. That's what he's good at, and that's what he uses to make his way in the world. And in the last movie, he was dealing with letting go of that, and it was kind of a joke. You know, he's like a 60-year-old guy who goes into a ring and fights a kid.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And like I said, that movie had its charms, but that's kind of a joke. But in this movie, he's kind of moved on, and he's a bit of a shell of a person, because he has all this knowledge, and I think he discovers throughout the movie that he's good at, he has some skills as a coach.
Yeah.
And he has all this knowledge that he can impart on this new person. And he kind of finds his new way in life through that process. And it's great. It was so great to see his character come full circle. There's no ridiculous physical demonstrations where he's trying to, you know, he's not doing any kind of crazy montage stuff like in the other movies where he's like pulling a cart in Russia, or he's doing whatever, running up the steps, which of course that has its charm. It's a great thing, but you know, we don't want to see an almost 70-year-old man try to do those things. It's fun. It's fun, and it's entertaining, and it's endearing to watch him transition into that role.
Yeah. And
I think this is one of his best performances as Rocky Balboa, maybe since the first movie, I think.
I totally agree.
It's terrific.
And he's so well suited for that. Like, at this point in his life, it's the character and the actor is so well suited for it, which, I mean, he's in good shape. Like, he looks good.
Right.
But it's just, it feels like, and granted, again, I haven't seen the franchise proper in a long time, but it feels like it feels like my perspective of the character is shifted, and he's injected some new life into the character through this new role where he's he's actually the age now that Burgess Meredith was when he played Mickey in the first movie.
Oh wow.
So it's just such a fitting transition for the character, and it fits so well. I mean, it's really great. So we talked about how in the first movie and in the franchise, Rocky's kind of this kind of like he's kind of forced to, like, he turns to boxing because he needs money, and he doesn't have like much to do, much else, many other options legally speaking. And I think that this movie kind of is the inverse of that. Adonis he's a successful guy. Like, there's a moment early in the movie where he has a promotion at this what looks like a lucrative office job. He's wearing a suit and all that. But so instead of being a man who's forced into this lifestyle choice and into this career path, it's the story of a successful guy who's being drawn to boxing. And I don't think that quite resonated the way that Rocky's story did. And I kind of feel like maybe it's a reflection of the world we live in now, where people like in our age bracket, like they, you know, people, I don't know. It's kind of like people will follow ambition and follow their dreams, even if it means, you know, casting aside something, lucrative and successful. Which, I mean, it kind of seems like it might be some kind of commentary on this, because it's not as depressing and dour as the original movie was, but it still didn't, it kind of felt a little, I don't know, not formed that well for me.
Yeah. I understand. I agree with you, because the rags to riches story is always more intriguing than just ambition.
Yeah.
You know, because like you said, he does it because he has to, because it's all he can do. But I think there's something to the fact that Adonis Johnson, there's something to the fact that he chooses to be a fighter, not because he's good at it, but because I think when you're a professional athlete, you do it because it's a calling. It's like some other jobs. Like, no one's a cop because it's just a job.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you become a cop because it's a calling. It's something that you yearn for. And I think that's the same thing in this story. And it's very endearing and entertaining to watch someone in his position try to become a professional fighter, because it's, I think for a lot of people, it's just not a very desirable lifestyle.
Yeah, and the character gets called out on it several times in the movie, so it's addressed. It's not like maybe it's just and this isn't even really a complaint on my part. It's more of just nitpicking. I kind of felt like it just didn't resonate in context with the rest of the franchise or with the original movie. But yeah, I think rewatching it, I'll probably enjoy it more, or I won't have a problem with this. But yeah, so yeah, I think it's an interesting parallel, I guess, between or dynamic,
yeah,
or dichotomy between the first movie and this movie, where it's kind of just the inverse, and it's interesting to see now in 2015 what a character in this plot line would go through. Basically, I guess
that's a really good point. I honestly hadn't thought about that.
Nice.
The juxtapiposition of those two stories.
Juxtaposition, that's the word I was looking for.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so anyway, what did you think of the relationship with Bianca?
I thought it was a little forced. Like, I think they were going for a Rocky and Adrian type thing.
Yeah.
I think it's important to show the lighter side and the gentler side of that kind of character.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just some brute who goes and punishes people. They have feelings and stuff like that. So I understand needing to demonstrate that. But I don't know. It just felt a little ceremonial, I guess.
Sure.
Just like, well, there has to be a love interest, so there's this. But I don't want to take anything away from, what was the actress's name? Tessa
Thompson, I think?
Hang
on. I'm scrolling up. Tessa Thompson.
She was great.
Yeah.
I'd never seen her in anything. I thought she did a really great job. She's really talented, has a great emotional range.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't just some empty female character love interest.
Right.
She had a lot of her own eccentricities, and she was a unique character in her own respect. So I appreciated that. She had her own talents, and she had her own ambition and her own things to overcome.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that, but yeah, there could have been some more there. It was not as endearing as Rocky and Adrian.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll agree with you to a point. And again, I haven't seen the original movie in a long time, but having just listened to the Now Playing podcast retrospective on it, I feel like Bianca was developed more than Adrian. Adrian, if the Now Playing guys are correct, and if my memory serves correctly, she was kind of a hollow character.
That's true. She was.
Yeah, she had like some social anxiety, social ineptitude. There's it's from what I've heard and from what I remember vaguely, she almost seems like she has like a mental disability.
Yeah.
And Bianca is a much more well-rounded character, in my opinion. Like you said, she has her own ambition, her own dreams, and her own obstacles to overcome. And that I think is where the fault lies with it, is that I like that they gave her own thing and her own dream, and like I like how that aspect of her life is kind of what Adonis and she bonded over, is that they both have something that they're working toward so much, and there's a good parallel between the two characters. However, I don't think that her ambition or her drive was really followed through that well. Because it's kind of introduced that she has this dream, she has something that she needs to overcome, or that that's going to stand in the way of her dream. And then she it doesn't really have a good through line there. Cause it's kind of ends with,
it's kind of dropped a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. So I kind of felt I felt like that was just that aspect of the story was a little underdeveloped, but I mean, it was already a pretty big movie. So it was necessary for the plot, especially in context with, in service to giving a well-rounded development to Adonis and Rocky's relationship and Adonis's story, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and did you notice this? It seemed like the movie was kind of toying with us with a few like kind of montage fake outs, like
a little bit, yeah.
Like there was like 2 or 3 times where they show like training, and it's like it's almost that Rocky montage. It's almost that iconic music, and it's like, oh man, this is where he's really going for it. But then it doesn't. It just kind of just stops, and it goes to another scene. And then it kind of toward the end, they kind of give the big montage and everything.
Right.
What did you think of the montage?
I thought it was. I mean, they're so cliched, and they're just so in every sports movie ever. But you just have to have them because, you know, you have people when they think of sports or when they watch sports, they watch the games, and it's like, you know, you're watching 2 hours of football or you're watching 20 minutes of boxing. What you don't see is the 3 or 6 months of training up into that.
Right.
And it's like, you have to demonstrate that in the movie because it's so integral to the development of the character that they're living a lifestyle. It's not just about going and fighting in a ring for an hour. You know, it's so much about how you live every moment of your life. You can't ever touch a drop of alcohol. You have to watch everything you eat. You have to wake up at 5 a.m. every single day. And it's just like, there's just so much monotony and tedium to it that you have to demonstrate it somehow, but you have to condense 3 months of training into one thing. Right. You know, it's like, so they have to be there. So you have to try to do something with it that makes it fun or creative. So right. I don't mark those as a flaw or a big credit. It's just something that has to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that I think I saw a tweet or someone said something somewhere that's pretty much, or that might have been actually in the Not Playing part. I don't know where it was, but anyway, they said that Team America kind of ruined montages for all movies, basically.
Right.
So, but having said that, I think that the big montage at the end, or kind of toward the end, it didn't really do it for me that much. Cause throughout the whole movie, I'm kind of getting ramped up for like, oh, this is going to be like a spine tingling kind of like nice, like moment, cathartic, like training montage thing. But like, and there's some parallels. It pays homage to the original montage. But like that, if memory serves, that montage was him running up the steps and finally like conquering this big thing.
Yeah.
And this montage is like he's running down the street with a bunch of dirt bikes around him. Like it didn't really resonate with me that well with that. But I mean, like that's such a minor thing about the movie, and that's such a minor point of the movie. I just thought that was kind of silly because it's like he's cheering as if he just accomplished something, and I was like, I don't really get what he accomplished.
Yeah, that's true. Acceptance, cool maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
But
it was an homage montage.
Yeah. Yeah. But having said that, like Philadelphia was just beautiful in this movie.
It was, yeah.
Like they just captured this movie or that place so wonderfully.
Right. It felt like Philly.
Yeah, and it really brought you into the world and the story and everything. Without going into spoilers, obviously, what did you think of the final fight, the final match?
I thought it was good. I mean, it's maybe a little bit predictable, or, you know, I really don't know. It was, I'm not sure what other outcome they could have gone with. I think it was a good move. It was,
well, one or the other outcome, really.
Well, I know, but it's like, no, they're not really, because it's, it was a little predictable, but I think it was the right move to make for the characters. I think it. I don't know what else they could have done that would have been as satisfying. I think it made sense.
Yeah, it did. I agree. And we talked about how, you know, the first one, or the first match in the movie is filmed just jaw-droppingly spectacularly. And I like that this was more conventional, conventionally shot and everything. And like another nitpick, I can't help it. It kind of cut in between the match and then different perspectives of it and everything. And one of them is Felicia Rashad as Adonis's mom at home watching it on TV, and I kind of felt like that's just super cliche and super like it.
It was out of place in this movie.
It was, because she was not a big part of the movie.
Not at all. I think she should have been in the first act, and that was it.
Yeah. I liked some of the way that she was brought back in a little bit, but it was also, it felt weird. It was like,
They should have either had her more displayed more prevalently throughout the movie, or she should have been dropped.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was they didn't strike a middle ground very well.
Right.
And I really didn't care about her character that much.
I didn't either, because she was not, like you said, she just wasn't a big part of the movie.
Right.
And that, cutting back to that, it felt like it was just super cliche.
Yeah,
and just
it was.
Really, it kind of brought down the experience for me a little bit, but,
yeah.
I did, yeah. And as for the outcome of the fight, I don't know. I don't think it's really what I would have liked for the movie, but like you said, I think it did fit the characters and the story being told well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just leave it at that, but,
Can we talk about the experience in the theater a little bit?
Yeah, because the movie kept cutting, like it cut back to Felicia Rashad, and the people behind us, I am notorious for being bothered by theater experiences and everything like that. But I honestly don't think that the people sitting directly behind us knew that they were watching a movie.
Yeah.
Because, oh my God.
I thought it was kind of fun, actually.
You're total, you know what it reminded me of? And we've talked about it on the podcast before. It was back, I don't know when it was. It was either the, 2015, it wouldn't be 2015. Anyway, it was, talking about As Above, So Below. How basically there were people in the theater disrupting the viewing experience for me.
Right.
And since I'm a princess who demands, the finest quality of movie experience, it bugged me to my core. But you had the same thing, like, it was funny. It was fun.
Yeah, well, and at that time during that movie it didn't bother me because the movie sucked, and I think the commentary was more entertaining than the movie.
Yeah.
But in this respect, I don't think they were being rude. They weren't.
No, they were just very enthusiastic.
It's not like there was a dialogue scene going on, but an intense dialogue scene between two characters going on. It was a big action scene.
Yeah.
And they were reacting to sports the way that people react to sports. They were cheering.
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of funny. They were like, come on, get up, and stuff like that. And oh no, get back up, and stuff like that. Like, it was, I thought it was kind of fun. It's like they kind of, I'd almost say they added something to it for me.
I would not take any of that away from it. And honestly, I think that part of the reason why it kind of bothered me a little bit is because one of the reasons why I'm just not a fan of sports is that for some reason, in my brain, anytime I see someone enthusiastically reacting to something, to a sporting event or anything, it makes me feel like a certain type of anxiety and a certain type of, like, it feels weird to me.
Okay.
And I've never been able to connect with a sports fan on that level in terms of being that enthused with the sport. Not saying that I have anything against it.
Right.
If anything, I'm kind of envious about the emotional connection that people can have for a sport thing.
Right.
For a sport thing. Two words that sums up my entire point.
That's awesome.
But to hear that in a movie, in my sanctuary, in my sports,
right?
In my sports, it just felt off. It felt just kind of weird. It didn't bother me that much. Like I intentionally didn't say anything to you about it after the movie, because normally I'm the guy that's like, oh, can you believe those a-holes just
right?
But I mean, and it seemed they were genuinely into it. And they genuinely enjoyed it. Like you said, it wasn't like they weren't screaming like, "Oh my God, his name is Adonis Creed. He's Apollo Creed's son." But yeah. So yeah.
Well, and also I think it was a packed theater we saw it in, and the comedy moments were. It's always more fun with more laughter. Like, when there's more people there laughing at the joke, it's always funnier. And so the comedic relief you mentioned was even better because of, I think, amplified by the crowd experience. So, I thought it was a great experience.
Yeah. And tons of, like, the whole theater seemed to really love the movie.
Yeah,
so
they did.
I'm really hoping that's indicative of the reception it gets when it gets released.
Me too.
Any chance for this being awards considered? I mentioned that for Michael B. Jordan, but anyone else or anything else?
Maybe. You just, like I said, you just never know. No. I might, depending on what comes out in the next couple of months and what the stuff I haven't seen yet, I might consider it for certain things.
Nice.
I really liked the script. So we didn't talk about that very much, but
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing that Sylvester Stallone didn't write this.
Yeah, totally.
It needed a fresh perspective. It really just needed it. It needed to not be about Rocky. It needed to be about someone else.
Right.
Obviously it's called Creed, but, that's the direction the franchise needed to go.
Right.
It had to move on. And so I was really impressed with the script they churned out here. It was, churned out is the wrong word. The script they built, cause it's very well structured. There's very little, needless stuff, superfluous scenes or lines. It's all very relevant and it's all satisfying, and it was structured well, paced well. I thought it was great. So maybe script, I don't know. I can't really say right now, but I think the movie personally for me has a very good shot of being on my top 10.
Nice. Very nice.
Shot. Yeah.
It's kind of up in the air for me. I'm planning on just going all out with the next, 6 weeks of the year.
Yeah.
And just seeing as many 2015 movies as I can. So it'll be something. By the way, I think I'm going to see Trumbo and, Spotlight this weekend.
Nice.
If you want to check it out. Anyway, we'll talk off air. So anyway, two final things, and we can go to Potpourri. One, what'd you think of the main antagonist, the opponent at the end? Because I kind of felt like, they kind of sprinkle some stuff in about him, and it's better that it wasn't like a big, Clubber Lang, really big personality or big villain role or anything. It's just, this is his opponent. He's got his own things going on, but now that I'm talking about it, I think that it was done well.
Yeah.
It was done very well. So what do you think of the guy?
The villains, quote unquote, antagonists in these movies are always just placeholders, really.
Yeah.
It's kind of just on to the next one, and a lot of them are, for the most part, kind of derivative. They're just kind of the same thing, really. They're a little cookie cutter. But I mean, Clubber Lang was kind of almost evil, really.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy was just kind of a jerk, and he just kind of embodied the whole bravado and alpha male kind of attitude that you almost need to have in a sport like this. And so I think he demonstrated all those things, and he was a solid antagonist. I don't think it took anything away or necessarily added a lot to the movie.
Right.
Like I said, just kind of a placeholder character.
Yeah, totally. And and it wasn't about Creed versus the guy. It was about Creed embracing his his legacy and all.
It was about Adonis Johnson becoming Adonis Creed.
Exactly. Yeah. With a little Rocky Balboa sprinkled in there.
Yeah.
And then final thoughts, and then we can give ratings on and go to Potpourri. Franchise. Would you want to see a sequel, following the adventures of Adonis Creed, or would this be better as a one-off, or whatever? Would you want to see 4 sequels or 6 sequels to Creed?
Maybe. I don't know. I think I definitely want to see more Adonis Creed. How that's done, I'm not sure. I'm always a fan of less is more, so at most, just make it another trilogy.
Yeah.
I don't want to see 6 more Creed movies. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to see more, but I'm always cautious about that stuff.
Right. You don't want, in 40 years for Michael B. Jordan to be training the son of whoever the guy he fought today in this movie. Yeah. I agree. I think that it's good as a standalone, and also I wouldn't mind if it's done right, seeing a sequel or two. Cause it's a very strong character, and he, is embodied very well by Michael B. Jordan. And I think that there's not a lot of negative here to make me think that it would be, a bad experience to revisit the world. So yeah. Ratings, any off the top of your head, ratings?
I'd give it a really solid 8.
I would do the same.
Nice.
So that concludes our review of Creed. And next we're going to do Potpourri, which for first-time listeners, Potpourri is the section of the podcast where we like to unwind and just talk about things that we're watching, things that we've watched, things that we're looking forward to, news items that have popped up. Anything we want, as long as it smells good. And once again, Tiny, I have 2 things, and then you have 1.
Correct.
Okay, so as I preface this, last week we did food documentaries, and we're actually recording this immediately after that. So last week you heard Tiny pick Absinthe as the documentary that as a documentary randomly picked from my Hulu queue, to watch. I haven't watched it yet because it was literally like half an hour ago. No, like 45 minutes ago. Anyway, so that'll be forthcoming. And for my Potpourri this week, for my first section of Potpourri, is something that I've been looking forward to for a long time.
It's been a while, yeah.
For this year.
Mm-hmm.
So back in December, I decided that in 2015 I was going to read more sci-fi, and so I judged a book by its cover, and I bought it at a bookstore. Leviathan Wakes by James S. A. Corey. It's the first of the Expanse series, which my Potpourri is the pilot episode of Syfy's The Expanse, based on the novel, based on the series of novels, The Expanse by James S. A. Corey, which is the pen name of Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham. So far there's 9 books planned. It's from Orbit Books. I'm all over the place here. Leviathan Wakes, Caliban's War, Abaddon's Gate, Cibola Burn, Nemesis games are all out now. Babylon's Ashes comes out next summer. And they also have many ebooks and everything. Worth mentioning, I actually invited the authors onto the podcast to talk about adapting their work into the show, but nice. They directed me to their publicist person, and they're obviously really, really busy.
Yeah.
But the invitation is still standing. It's standing invitation. The Expanse. Now that all that's out of the way, The Expanse is basically it's about a future where humans have colonized the solar system. And it's kind of a blend of, kind of noirish, horror, sci-fi kind of stuff, spacefaring stuff. And the pilot episode, Dulcinea, is set to premiere December 14th. And it's set to premiere December 14th, but what Syfy very wisely did was they launched it, had a digital premiere basically on the 23rd of November. So basically what that means is that I woke up on the 23rd and The Expanse was everywhere. You could watch the entire, and you still can, you can watch the entire pilot episode on Facebook, YouTube,
wow,
Google Play, iTunes, I believe, iTunes, yes, everywhere. And if you've read Leviathan Wakes and Caliban's War, if you're familiar with the series, I quipped online that that's a very one of the main characters of the books is in the show is his name's Jim Holden. And it's a very Jim Holden thing for Syfy to do, to just release it everything, and it'll make more sense when you watch the show. But anyway, Dulcinea is the pilot episode. Here's a plot description. In the asteroid belt near Saturn, James Holden and the crew of the ice freighter Canterbury investigate a distress call from a mysterious derelict ship, the Scopuli. On Ceres Station, Detective Miller begins an off-the-book investigation of a missing heiress, Julie Mao. First of all, the special effects in this show are breathtakingly beautiful. There's a lot of different varied environments. This Ceres Station is basically this asteroid that's been colonized. So there's like tunnels and tunnels for like trains basically to go through, and it's very claustrophobic, and like a big part of the Expanse is that there's conflict between what they're called as belters and earthers. So like there's it's a very expansive universe, and so it's really demonstrated well visually in the show. One of the downsides of it is that they have a lot of ground to cover, exposition wise and story wise. So there's like kind of a big exposition dump in the beginning of the pilot. There's, title card saying like the year, blah, 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 blah. This is what's going on and everything. And then as soon as we see Ceres Station, after just breathtakingly beautiful visuals, you just hear someone just spouting off like kind of a call to arms for the Belters to fight against the Earthers and all that, or the inner planets or whatever. you just hear him spouting off, like literally, like just spouting off exposition. Like, one of the scenes in the trailer is, he's saying like they built a world off of our backs or something like that. But anyway, so that was kind of not off-putting, but it was necessary, but it was also kind of bothered me a little bit. But the episode overall was just really good. And I'm biased because I've read the books and I'm a big fan of the books. By the way, you can read my reviews of the first 3 books on Obsessive Book Nerd. I'll put the links in the show notes. Let's see. So one of my main concerns going into it is, the character of Holden. Cause in the books, he's a little hard to like, real, sometimes, like he's kind of got this way about him that's kind of hard, a little off-putting in the books, but like it's, first of all, I love seeing the characters come to life, and Holden is fantastic in the show. Like he's played by Stephen Strait, and it's like from the word go, when I first saw him, I was like, this is really not quite what it's what I expected, but it's also just, it's more life to the character than what I was accustomed to from reading the books, because I was kind of not off-put by him in the books, but they made him a fully fleshed character in the show from the outset, so I was really enjoying that. The kind of counter to that, the other main character is Detective Miller, who's played by Thomas Jane.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's I'm looking forward to that. He's great in the pilot. But yeah, so anyway, it was really good. I liked it. You only get a peek at the characterization of all the characters and everything. But having known the books, I know these characters, so I can't really speak to how it's introduced in the pilot alone. So yeah, but yeah. Anyway, so I tweeted, and this will be my final thing. I tweeted about how great the visuals are and everything, and Jeff Palermo, who he hosts the Syfy On Screen podcast, which, by the way, if you're a sci-fi fan, you should definitely check out that podcast. It's
nice.
Like it's amazing. He does he basically goes scene by scene and deconstructs science fiction movies, and like it's I'm amazed by it, actually. Anyway, so he tweeted after I complimented the visuals of the show. He tweeted that it's not very good though, or it's too bad it's not very good though. And then I said like, oh, you didn't like it? And then he said everything was just very cliched to me, but I have not read the books. And you know, it's a fair point, and there are some pretty cliche things in it. But I would say that if it does the books justice, which I believe that they will, because the authors have been working very closely with the production, which at Ty Frank, he runs the James S.A. Corey Twitter handle. Like, he's constantly tweeting about just production stuff and everything.
Nice.
But if it does the books justice, which I'm sure it will, it'll be a really great meld of sci-fi and horror and noir, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Nice.
Yeah. And I was kind of interesting. It was interesting. I talked about how they did the digital premiere that way, and it's funny because I thought that like, oh, this is a really clever move on their part, and then I realized today when I was making my notes, like, it's most likely because it was going to come out. It's going to air December 14th with 2 episodes, by the way. So it'll be a new episode still. But it's probably they probably released it early online to drum up interest, because the premiere date is the Monday before Star Wars comes out. So smart move either way. Yeah. And I previously talked about the Expanse in OV142 from February, our post-Oscars potpourri. So if you want to check that out, it's at the 1 hour and 5 minute mark. So, Tiny, having said that, do you think you're going to watch the Expanse?
Oh, I'm definitely going to.
Nice.
I can't commit to watching the whole season or the whole series or whatever, because I haven't seen any of it, but I'm definitely checking out that that premiere.
Nice.
I'm really interested. I think it sounds like a great concept. And hearing your fervor for it, I'm excited to see it.
It's drawing a lot of comparisons to Battlestar Galactica.
Nice, which I loved.
And it's a lot more open than that, obviously. But because it's a lived-in universe and all that.
Right.
It's not confined to one specific place, but in terms of just the world building and everything, and the visuals, I mean, yeah, you'll watch it and let me know, because I'm really enthused about it.
Nice.
Yeah. So having said that, what's your potpourri?
Mine, you're gonna be absolutely shocked. It's a documentary.
No.
My time is limited. I just don't watch a lot as much as I used to, and so this is just one of the things I've watched lately. It's gaining a lot of. It's a documentary that's gaining a lot of like online buzz. A lot of people are talking about it. It's called An Honest Liar.
Mm-hmm.
It's on Netflix, and it's been on there for a few months now. And I think a lot of people have watched it. It's this really interesting documentary about a professional magician. The Amazing Randy was his stage name. He basically he was a relatively well-known magician in the 50s and 60s, but he really made a name for himself by calling out hoaxsters and like snake oil kind of people who kind of the people that you see on like television who are claiming they can cure people of diseases through the power of Jesus Christ and stuff like that. Anyone who's being dishonest. It's a very interesting dynamic that this guy has set up, because it's almost hard to understand, because he's a magician and he made his money doing illusions and escaping from things. He was kind of a sort of a new age Houdini. He did a lot of escape stuff. So people sort of see him as a bit of a hypocrite, but I think there's a there's a context. It's all about context. You know, he's doing it in the pursuit of entertainment. People are paying a small fee to be entertained for a couple hours. That's what he did. He doesn't like the people who claim they can talk to spirits and charge people money every week to come in and feed them a line feed them some kind of story that's helping their psychological development as a human being that's completely dishonest. So he made a name for himself in the 80s and 90s by calling these people out. He went on the Tonight Show several times to basically prove people as hoaxes. And he's a very interesting man. He's in his 80s now, I believe. And he's still kind of out there doing this stuff and trying to prove people wrong. And he's published several books, basically pointing out what things are hoaxes and what things aren't. There was a famous man that he helped sort of, the guy remained famous and held on to his career, but he was never really, he never took off the way he should have. There was a guy who could like claim that he could bend metal things with his mind. And he exposed him as a hoax. There was a televangelist who was, he was getting pieces of mail from people and using it during the show. He had an earwig in, and someone was telling him things in an earwig, and he was famous for listing off where people lived.
Jeez.
And really it was just someone reading an envelope from a piece of mail.
That's so messed up.
Yeah. And so he had a career calling out hoaxsters, and it was just, it's something that I really respect that he was so dedicated to.
Right.
He's just a really interesting man, and the documentary is done very well. It actually is filmed during I won't spoil anything, but it's filmed during a bit of a controversy in his own personal life. Okay. That sort of sheds some interesting light given what he did throughout his life. It's just a really great documentary. If you're interested in magic at all, or illusions, or even just someone telling the truth, I mean, it's a really interesting documentary. I think anyone will really find a way to like it. It's really cool.
Very cool. That's been on my queue for a while, or since it got added to Netflix. I think it came up pretty recently. Yeah. Yeah, and I heard a lot of kind of chatter on Twitter about it. Like there was some pretty good buzz about it. So I'll definitely check that out soon.
Yeah. It's good.
Nice. So to round us out for this week, I watched a feature film called Slow West. I watched it on Amazon, and it's a Western. It's about a young Scottish man travels across America in pursuit of the woman he loves, attracting the attention of an outlaw who is willing to serve as a guide. This movie is written and directed by John McLean. It's his first feature-length movie. He has 2 shorts under his belt, one of which, at least one of which, stars one of the stars of this movie, Mr. Michael Fassbender.
Nice.
The young Scottish man is played by Cody Smith McPhee, who from The Road, and he's going to be in X-Men Apocalypse. Also starring is Ben Mendelsohn, who I'm just a big fan of from Bloodline and Dark Knight Rises and all that. Mm-hmm. And then also in a brief supporting role is Rory McCann, who plays on Game of Thrones. He's the Hound.
The Hound, right?
Yeah. So it's a good cast, and I really basically it's a Western. And, Michael Fassbender is the outlaw who helps Cody Smith McPhee get across the country to find his love. The movie, I really like the setup because it's really quick and goes right into the plot. And Fassbender's entrance into the movie is really strong. Basically, Jay is the kid, the guy's name, Cody Smith McPhee's character. Jay is cornered by an official who's Michael Fassbender's character refers to him as an Injun slayer. Basically, they're hunting down Native Americans, essentially.
Wow.
And so Fassbender's character he does something to kind of, it's very quick and deadly to the guy, and Jay just looks at me and he's like, he was an officer, and Fassbender has this great line where he's like, wearing a dress don't make her a lady. And I was like, that's so awesome.
That's
and
such a Western line.
It is, and I was so on board there. However, this quick setup and moving right along into the plot, it comes at a cost, cause the movie kind of holds back some of the motivations and plot threads a little too much. Like we eventually find out that, Jay's girl has, a bounty on her. And then it's introduced that they're being chased by Mendelsohn, who's kind of the head of a bounty hunter gang, who Fassbender was previously a part of. And getting these details out just slows down the movie pretty significantly. Like it's kind of not really a slog to get through, but there's that middle point where it feels like these plot developments could have come earlier, and it could have made for a more, a brisker paced movie for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because when the ending comes and it kind of comes, it goes into a direction where you kind of, I was kind of expecting the ending that it was getting to. And it even felt kind of cliche at times because it was basically, the end, the big climax of the movie is basically exactly what you would think this movie's climax would be. And it's stuff that I've seen in, frankly, better movies that were more engaging. But then there's kind of this little, not twist, but there's something that happens. I won't give it away, but it kind of turns that expectation on its head. And I really respected the way that, it was handled. It was almost Shakespearean in a way. Yeah, and it kind of caught me off guard, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. It was,
Nice.
it was really good. So overall, I think that this would be a solid, this would be 6.5, but the ending almost brought it to a 7.0 for me. I will pay attention to McLean's future, cause I think that this was a good showcase for him, in terms of just visual style and technique. I think he has some stuff to work out. But yeah, and there was one moment in the movie where I don't know if this was supposed to be if this was just supposed to be like a bit of subtle like symbolism, or if this was intended to be as overt as it was, or if it was supposed to be a sight gag to lessen the tension in a moment, which I don't think it was. But there's a moment where, literally salt is poured into a wound. Like it's literally like salt is on someone's wound.
Wow.
By accident. And it's like, I cackled at it with laughter. Like it's a pretty dramatic moment, but I was like, they're literally pouring salt into a wound. And it felt kind of silly, and I laughed and enjoyed it in kind of a morbid way, but it also came at a point where the drama of the movie I'll say it probably wasn't intentional to be that to get that response, but I chuckled and I thought that it was pretty funny. Yeah. So that's a lot of talking, Tiny.
It is a lot.
Yeah. So next week we're going to release our Starbase Indie panel, which it's already happened. So and like I said, we did the Tiny picked a Potpourri for me, and I didn't get a chance to watch it yet because it's been like an hour, but I will watch it. And Tiny, do you want to pick one more just to round us out?
Sure, I can.
Okay, and then I'll do two, and then I think what we might do is if we have time, we might tack on my Potpourri for these two things onto our Starbase Indie panel episode to kind of have a fully rounded episode for you guys. So Tiny is picking something out of it now, and I will probably edit this out to streamline it.
It's Netflix numbers 321 through 360.
Okay.
I'm going to go with 340. All
right, so number 340 on my Netflix queue, hopefully that is a nice edit, is Pontypool from 2008. It's a zombie movie, I believe. Valentine's Day is off to a bizarre start for a radio shock jock when he runs into a crazed woman on his way to work, and that's only the beginning. I've been really anxious to see this movie, so I will watch it and I will report back.
Interesting.
Yes. Okay. All right, so having said that, that does it for this week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer.
Yep.
And thank you for listening, and we will be back next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to The Obsessive Viewer, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find more of our episodes at ovpodcast.com, and you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or your preferred podcast app. The Obsessive Viewer's theme song is An Eclipse of Events and is provided by Loudlike from their EP Mistakes We Must Make. You can find that and more great music from them on iTunes and like their Facebook page at facebook.com/loudlikemusic. Any and all feedback on the podcast is encouraged. You can email the hosts individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at ObsessiveViewer.com, or send an email to the podcast in general at podcast@ObsessiveViewer.com. Check out the Obsessive Viewer blog at ObsessiveViewer.com, where we post movie and TV reviews and the occasional editorial about the business of entertainment. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/TheObsessiveViewer and follow us on Twitter at ObsessiveViewer, at ObsessiveTiny, and at IamMikeWhite. If you want more obsessive content in your life, check out our sister site, ObsessiveBookNerd.com, for book reviews, author spotlights, and a general celebration of reading. Finally, if you're philosophically curious, check out Tiny's side project podcast, The Secular Perspective, which explores the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts. You can find that at thesecularperspective.com and subscribe to the podcast on the podcatcher of your choice.
Again, thank you so much for listening.
We love you. Be excellent to each other.